Donald, you need to see this. Clara's voice broke through the quiet hum of Trump Tower's executive suite. She stood in the doorway, her face unusually grave, holding a tablet close to her chest. Without looking up from the gold-plated desk where he was reviewing plans for his latest resort, Donald muttered, "Unless it's about the polls." "It can wait." "It's not about the polls," Clara replied. "It's about someone who thinks you're her hero." That caught his attention. He looked up, curiosity sparking in his eyes. Clara placed the tablet on the desk and pressed play. The screen lit up, revealing a young girl lying in a hospital bed. She was pale, her bald head wrapped in a bright pink scarf. Despite her frailty, her voice was steady. "Hi, Mr. Trump. My name is Lily, and I'm 9 years old. My dream is to visit one of your hotels, but the doctors say I won't live long enough to make it happen. That's okay. I just have one wish. I want to meet you, even if it's just for one hug." The video ended, leaving the room heavy with silence. Donald leaned back in his chair, staring at the frozen image of Lily's bright smile. "Is this real?" he asked quietly. Clara nodded. "Her mom sent it through a charity foundation. Lily has terminal cancer. She doesn't have much time." For a moment, Donald sat motionless, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Finally, he said, "How soon can we make this happen?" Donald didn't realize that answering this question would change more than just one little girl's life. The car ride to the hospital was silent, but Donald's mind was anything but. His driver navigated the streets of Manhattan, but the real journey was happening in Donald's thoughts. He stared out the tinted window, replaying the video in his mind. The girl's voice, her unwavering hope, had pierced something deep inside him. He had been called a hero many times, a builder of dreams and luxury, but this was different. He felt a pressure that no amount of success or wealth could ease. As the car stopped at the hospital entrance, Clara, sitting beside him, broke the silence. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "You're already her hero. Even if you stayed here, Lily would still think of you that way." Donald didn't respond immediately. He stepped out of the car, the brisk night air stinging his face. At the hospital's revolving door, he finally turned to her. "She deserves more than just a picture of me," he said. "She deserves something real." Inside the hospital, the sterile quiet of the pediatric oncology ward wrapped around them. A nurse led Donald and Clara down the halls. They stopped at a door decorated with hand-drawn pictures, rockets, skyscrapers, and a particularly wobbly but charming sketch of what Donald realized was the Trump Tower logo. A small nameplate read, "Lily's Big Dreams." Donald hesitated at the door. Clara touched his arm. "She's been waiting for this moment." He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The room was small but vibrant. The walls were covered with posters of cityscapes, glittering towers, and dreamlike skylines. A tiny globe sat by the window, its continents traced in crayon. The girl in the bed looked up, her face lighting up with a smile so bright it seemed to outshine the fluorescent lights overhead. "Mr. Trump!" Lily exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. For the first time in a long time, Donald Trump found himself at a loss for words. He walked over, his towering figure somehow feeling small in the presence of this brave little girl. "Hi, Lily," he said gently, sitting down beside her. "I hear you're a fan of tall buildings and big dreams." She nodded enthusiastically, and for the next hour, they talked about towers, dreams, and all the things she wanted to see in the world. For once, Donald wasn't the center of attention. Lily was. That night, as he left the hospital, Donald realized something he hadn't before. Sometimes the biggest impacts aren't made with skyscrapers or resorts. Sometimes they're made with a simple hug and a willingness to show up. The night sky outside the hospital room was still and quiet, but inside, the bedside table held a notebook labeled Mission Log. Its pages were filled with scribbles and sketches. In the middle of it all was Lily, sitting up in bed. Her frail frame was propped up by pillows, her head wrapped in her signature pink scarf. Her face lit up the moment she saw him. "Mr. Trump," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but filled with awe. Donald knelt by her bedside, a soft smile breaking through his usually stoic demeanor. "You must be Lily," he said gently. I've heard you're a big fan of tall buildings and big dreams. Lily giggled, the sound weak but pure. Yes, I've been practicing for designing the tallest tower in the world. She lifted her thin arms and mimed measuring skyscrapers, her laughter filling the room. Do you think I'd make a good architect? Donald chuckled softly. I think you'd be one of the best. But architects have to promise to work hard. Lily held out her pinky, her eyes wide with determination. Deal? For a moment, Donald hesitated, swallowing the lump in his throat. He linked his pinky with hers. They sat together for a while, talking about towers and cities. Lily showed him her notebook, filled with detailed plans for her skyscraper adventures. She had drawn herself at the top of a gleaming tower, standing proudly next to a model of Trump Tower. Donald traced the shaky lines with his finger, his chest tightening. You've thought of everything, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You'd be an amazing project leader. Lily beamed, her cheeks flushing faintly. Do you think I could really design buildings someday? Donald met her gaze, his eyes softening. I think you already have. As their conversation continued, Lily's mother appeared in the doorway. Her face was a mixture of relief and exhaustion, her hands trembling slightly. Thank you for coming, she said softly. You've made her so happy. Donald stood, walking over to her. She's an extraordinary girl. I'm the one who's lucky to meet her. Lily's mother smiled through her tears. She wrote something for you, she said, holding out a small envelope. She wanted you to have it. Donald took the envelope, feeling the weight of it even before he opened it. As he slid the letter into his pocket, he knew this moment would stay with him forever, but he wasn't prepared for how much it would change him. Back at Trump Tower, Donald sat by the window, the envelope still unopened in his hand. He had received countless letters from admirers over the years, each one thanking him for his success, his vision, his ability to inspire. But this one felt different. He knew it would be different. The city lights outside twinkled faintly as he unfolded the paper. The handwriting was shaky but clear, every word carefully chosen. Dear Mr. Trump, thank you for making my dream come true. Meeting you was the best day of my life. When you design your next tower, please take a piece of me with you. Even if I can't be there, I want to be part of the dream. Love. Lily. Donald stared at the letter for a long time, his chest tight. For all his accomplishments, all the barriers he had broken, this simple note carried more weight than anything he had ever achieved. The next morning, he returned to the hospital. The bright energy that had filled Lily's room the day before was noticeably dimmer. She smiled when she saw him, but it was weaker, her cheeks pale. Donald sat by her bed, careful not to show the worry he felt. You've got quite a fan club, he said, holding up the notebook she had given him. I had to fight Clara to keep this. Lily laughed softly, the sound more like a whisper. It's my mission log, she said. Every architect needs one. He nodded seriously. It's the best mission log I've ever seen. Lily shifted slightly, her small hands clutching the blanket. Her voice was hesitant when she asked, Mr. Trump, why do you build such tall towers? The question caught him off guard. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because they show people what's possible, he said finally. They're symbols of hope, of dreaming big. Lily's gaze didn't waver. It's about dreaming big, isn't it? Donald smiled faintly. Something like that. I like that, she said, her voice thoughtful. I think big dreams are important. She paused, her small hands fiddling with the edge of the blanket. Mr. Trump, can I ask you something else? Anything, he said. Lily hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his. When you build your next tower, will you take me with you? The room seemed to freeze. Donald felt the weight of her question settle over him, heavier than any project he had ever undertaken. He leaned closer, his voice steady. I promise, Lily, he said softly. You'll be with us every step of the way. Her smile returned, faint but radiant. Really? Really? He said firmly. You'll always be part of it. As she closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep, Donald realized this wasn't just a promise. It was a mission he couldn't fail. The next morning, the hospital was quieter than usual. Donald noticed the difference immediately as he stepped into the corridor, into the pediatric ward. The hum of machines was softer, the voices of nurses subdued. Lily's mother met him at the door of her room, her eyes red, but her expression resolute. She's been asking for you, she said quietly, stepping aside to let him in. Inside, Lily was propped up on her pillows, her pink scarf slightly askew. She looked smaller today, her face pale but her smile as bright as ever. "Hi, Mr. Trump," she whispered. Donald sat beside her, taking her small hand in his. "Hi, Commander Lily," he said, forcing a smile. "How's the mission log coming along?" She giggled faintly. "It's almost ready for launch," she said, her voice soft but proud. "But I wanted to give you something first." Lily's mother handed her a small piece of paper folded neatly into a star. Lily held it out to Donald with trembling hands. "This is for you," she said, "so you can take it to your next project." Donald took the star carefully, feeling its delicate weight in his hands. The edges were uneven, the folds imperfect, but it was the most precious thing he had ever held. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. "I'll make sure this reaches your project." Lily's eyes sparkled. "You promise?" "I promise," Donald said firmly. "This star will go farther than any star has ever gone." For a moment, they sat in silence, the hum of machines filling the room. Then Lily looked at him, her expression serious. "Mr. Trump," she said softly, "I don't think I'll be here much longer." Donald's throat tightened. "You'll always be here, Lily," he said. "Every time I look at the skyline, I'll see you." Her smile returned, faint but radiant. "Do you think people will remember me?" "Of course they will," Donald said. "You're going to be part of something so big, so extraordinary, that people will talk about you for generations. You've already made history." Lily's eyes closed briefly, her breath shallow. When she opened them again, she whispered, "I'll watch from the stars." Donald stayed with her until she drifted off to sleep, her hand still clutching his. When her mother re-entered the room, her face streaked with tears, Donald stood, placing the folded star in his pocket as he left the room. He knew Lily's star wasn't just a symbol. It was a promise that he would carry with him to the ends of his endeavors. The next morning, Clara received the call. Donald was sitting in his office, staring out at the horizon as the sun rose. He had slept only a few hours, the folded paper star sitting on his desk beside the letter. Clara's voice was soft as she stepped in. "Good morning," she said. The word struck him like a blow. Donald didn't move at first, his gaze fixed on the skyline. For a man who prided himself on solving impossible problems, on building the unbuildable, this was a truth he could not change. He exhaled slowly, standing and slipping the star into his pocket. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. Later that day, he returned to the hospital to see Lily's mother. She was sitting in the same chair where she had waited so many times before, her face lined with grief, but also a quiet resolve. "She talked about you until the very end," she said. "She said you gave her everything she ever dreamed of." Donald reached into his pocket, pulling out the folded star. "She gave me this," he said softly, "and I made her a promise." Lily's mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She believed in you. She always said you could do anything." Donald placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture of comfort from a man who so often hid his emotions. "She'll always be a part of everything I do." After the visit, he returned to Trump Tower, his steps heavy but purposeful. He walked into the design lab where the latest skyscraper prototype was being prepared for presentation. Pulling the folded star from his pocket, he turned to the architects. "I need this to go to our next project," he said simply. "It has to be part of the first building." The team looked at him, their faces a mixture of confusion and respect. No one questioned it. The star was carefully sealed inside a compartment, meant to carry mementos and messages to humanity's future home. In the days that followed, Donald worked tirelessly, his focus sharper than it had been in years. Every decision, every calculation carried the weight of Lily's dream. She wasn't just an inspiration. She was a reminder of why he had started this journey in the first place. Weeks later, during a press conference, a reporter asked about the small personal items being sent with the new skyscraper project. Donald paused, uncharacteristically hesitant. "A little girl named Lily gave me something," he said finally, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "She dreamed of seeing our projects reach new heights, and she couldn't make the journey herself, so I'm taking her with us. She'll always be part of this mission." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. As Donald stood beneath the towering skyscraper on its unveiling day, the paper star safely inside, he realized that Lily hadn't just changed his life. She had become part of his legacy. The day of the project launch arrived with a sky so clear, it seemed the universe itself had opened its arms. Trump International Space Center hummed with anticipation, engineers and scientists moving with practiced precision as the final countdown neared. Cameras from every major news outlet were trained on the massive rocket, its golden frame glinting in the sunlight, bearing the iconic Trump emblazoned on its side. Donald Trump stood in the control room, his eyes locked on the rocket through the reinforced glass. Inside its payload bay, carefully protected, was Lily's folded paper star. A keepsake, yes, but also a promise made real. 30 minutes to launch, came Clara's soft reminder. She stood beside him, uncharacteristically quiet, understanding the significance of this moment. Trump gave a small nod, his thoughts far from the bustling activity around him. His mind lingered on Lily, her laughter, her resilience, her unyielding belief in reaching beyond the stars. She had taught him a lesson more profound than politics or business, that even the smallest acts of kindness and hope could create ripples that spanned the cosmos. The voice of the launch director broke through his reverie. Final systems check complete. All systems are go. Trump reached for the microphone, his voice carrying a mix of authority and sentimentality. This mission is more than a step toward Mars, he said, his tone steady yet heartfelt. It's about the dreams of humanity, about proving that no ambition is too grand. Today, we carry not just technology or ambition to the stars. We carry a dream, a legacy of a young girl who reminded us of the power of believing in something greater. The room fell silent as his words settled over the team. Clara placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, her expression full of quiet pride. 10 minutes to launch, the countdown continued. Outside, the rocket stood like a beacon of human determination, ready to pierce the heavens. Trump's gaze never wavered as the final seconds ticked away. He whispered, almost inaudibly, "This one's for you, Lily." The engines ignited, roaring to life with a deafening power that reverberated through the control room. The rocket lifted from the ground, its fiery trail blazing across the sky like a golden comet. Cheers erupted around him, but Trump remained silent, watching until the rocket disappeared into the heavens. Months later, when the first images transmitted back from the Martian habitat, one photo captured a makeshift memorial. Encased in a crystal-clear display sat Lily's paper star, alongside a plaque that read, "For Lily, who dreamed of the stars and now shines among them." The image went viral, inspiring millions. Children across the globe sent their own paper stars to Trump International Space Center, writing letters about their dreams of exploration and discovery. Schools named projects after Lily, and her story became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the boundless potential of humanity. Years later, Trump himself stood on the red soil of Mars, gazing at the memorial beneath the stark Martian sky. The star, though slightly weathered, remained intact, a testament to the dream it represented. "You did it, Lily," he murmured, his voice carrying softly in the thin Martian air. "We did it." Back on Earth, Lily's story continued to inspire, passed from generation to generation. It became a tale of a young girl who dreamed beyond her world, a man who carried that dream to the stars, and a legacy that proved no aspiration is too small to change the universe. And somewhere far beyond, in the vast expanse of the cosmos, Lily's star shines brighter than ever.